Getting rowdy in the back, everybody. Want to welcome everybody to the April 2nd, 2025 meeting of the Transportation Coordinating Committee. I appreciate everybody coming here today. Ms. Lou tells me that we have a quorum. Start off by letting everybody know we have provided a hybrid option for those who are not able to be here today. And y'all can communicate in the chat if there's anybody logged in. First item we have on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes from the March meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? I have a motion from Mr. Rose. Do we have a second? Second. Jim made a second. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, the minutes stand approved. Next item on the agenda is opportunity for public comment. Do we have anybody in attendance today who wishes to make a public comment? Hearing none, we'll move to item 3, action items. Doesn't look like we have any action items scheduled on the agenda here today. So we'll move on down to the informational items. Introduce GNRC staff to present on RTP plan activities. Michael, are you going to do that, or is that doing
anything? Get started. I'll get it started, and I'll hand it over to Michael. So today's update, we've been talking about this the last few meetings. You have in your packet the initial candidate project list that was submitted by all your towns and counties and TDOT. Upcoming county level workshops. You may have seen an email from me yesterday on that. And then we will be asking you today for input on our policy framework. Are you good? Yeah, thanks. So again, we're moving down the scheduling tracker there. Last time we gave a planning process overview. I mentioned what we're talking about today, and then looking toward May, you can see we'll be coming up on the finalizing that policy framework that we're asking you for input on today, and really digging into some of those financial assumptions and how that's going to play out. So candidate project list. Some interesting stats here for you, and we have Michael's created a whole spreadsheet of just how everything breaks down, just out of interest, but 317 applications across the board so far. TDOT represents about 16% of those, and 12.69 billion. And I think if y'all remember looking at the last RTP, I think that ended up being around 10.5. So we're showing a significant increase, which shows a significant need here. The next steps for you all as TCC members is to make sure you go back and look at your projects, correct errors, look for omissions that you meant to include projects, but you didn't include projects. You should all still be able to get into the site. But again, if you ever have trouble, please reach out to this. If you do have missing projects, we have a deadline for you. That's our first county workshop on 4/15. So please get them in by then. Thank you. So again, that email I sent that you may have seen yesterday, asking for your availability for county workshops. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but we'll really be looking at the project lists that have been submitted in the counties, trying to talk about some of the financial assumptions, I believe, and also anything that we left out or duplications, things like that. So while you all are doing that back at GNRC, we're going to be working hard in the background and getting these geocoded and doing the spatial analysis so we can see them on the maps in the system. We're also working with consultants on the independent cost estimates to make sure we're not highly undervaluing or overvaluing anything, and then doing the staff assessments based on those priorities that you're giving us. Again, on the county level workshops, we're going to do 3 rounds of these. These are important. So again, the first round in April that we're requesting, cost estimates, funding availability, schedules, and then we will go over also kind of how we're approaching it with our methodology and prioritization. And then keep on the lookout for our next 2 rounds as well. In July, we'll provide the preliminary results and discuss potential changes, and then kind of a final look with cost estimates, scheduling, and scope in August, right before we bring the draft to the TCC and TPB in the following month. So this is kind of the block schedule we have available. We've got Sumner already set on the 15th. With that email, I hope that what would be really helpful to us is that if you could make an executive decision, find somebody in the county group that can just say, okay, hold this day for us. And Matthew is helping to schedule this. I can turn it over to him, and you can talk to him after as well.
Yeah, I mean, mostly just echoing what Daniel has said so far, but I will say I have been cataloging the email responses that have come in so far. So if any of you want to stick around at the end of the meeting today to help coordinate, I'm happy to review the responses that have come in from your county so far, or to do any sort of coordination to help you figure that out. I will comment, we are hoping to do these meetings on site in the county. So we are looking for, I think we're kind of expecting it might be the county offices, but if you're willing to host in your county, we would love to collect that information as well. So you'll either hear from me by email, or do feel free to stick around after the meeting so we can review the submitted time so far.
Yeah, or go ahead and pick a date after
Yes.
the meeting, and we'll just get it down, get it in the calendar. All right. So with that, move on to the policy framework and hand it over to Michael.
Thank you, Daniel. And definitely want to encourage you to stick around after this meeting. Just go ahead and pick a date. That's probably the easiest path forward since we're all in the room together. This morning, we wanted to put on your table the policy framework that was incorporated into the 2045 plan adopted back in 2021. We're looking for your input on 3 elements of that: the guiding principles, the regional goals, and the primary objectives. These are the parts of the policy framework that have the most significant influence on how we evaluate projects for the limited funding that we have available. Daniel just mentioned that the 317 applications submitted so far, we're looking at about $12.7 billion of costs. Those are today's dollars. The 10.5 billion that he referenced, which is the fiscally constrained revenue in our current plan, was year of expenditure costs. So we're well over that $10.5 billion just on the submissions that we've gotten so far. There's some good news and there's some bad news. The good news is that some of those costs are on projects that have already been let. And I think some of those TDOT projects will probably roll back, Stacy, assuming in terms of their total costs. So there could be some downsizing of the cost estimates for some of the projects that are on the list. But the bad news is, again, it's base year, it's not year of expenditure. And it also, we know that list is missing a few high profile projects that were not submitted. That's the deadline being extended to April 15th to make sure we get those in. So that number is going to go up even for the base year, most likely. So the way we'll evaluate projects that are competing for that limited revenue is by evaluating how well they align with our policy framework, namely those goals and the objectives. So I'll just walk you through each of these components and then show you how you can give us your feedback. We're hoping to get your feedback by May 1st to allow us to process and analyze your input so that we can present you the results at your May meeting, which is, I believe, the 7th, and then take a draft policy framework to the policy board in May for their endorsement. The guiding principles are livability, prosperity, sustainability, and diversity. What we're asking you to do is to go into the questionnaire that we provided to you online and just let us know if these hold true or if they need updating. If they need updating, there's a place for you to suggest edits to those. The regional goals, which we've looked at the last few meetings, there are 6 of these that are included in the plan. We're looking for you to help us understand if they hold true or if they need updating. And then also to help ensure that the weighting that we have shown on the screen here, this is the order priority for the goals and how much they will individually influence the project evaluations and rankings. There'll be an opportunity for you to say, I support these current weights, or I want to reweight them. If you choose to want to re-weight them, then congratulations, you just earned like 14 more questions on the survey to do sort of a head-to-head competition between each of the goals. And then there are 24 objectives that are nested within those 6 goals. And similarly, we're asking you to just let us know if they hold true or if they need updating. There's no weighting to the objectives. It's just input on whether or not you think they continue to be appropriate. There's also an opportunity for you to recommend additional objectives that we could incorporate into the plan. We'll include this link in the recap email that goes out shortly after this meeting. But if you want to capture this information now, it's gnrc.org/survey/RTP. This will be an evergreen URL that will probably just keep swapping out where it goes. Right now, it goes to this particular opportunity for you to input on the policy framework. We're looking for feedback on language. We're looking for you to help us prioritize the goals. And then there's plenty of opportunity for you to offer additional suggestions or things that you want us to consider as we prepare the draft for the May meetings. Any questions? Very good. The deadline for this input is May 1st. It's a very generous deadline relative to the meeting schedule. So if you could do it sooner in April, that would be better. But we know you're busy, so we wanted to give you as much time as possible to get your input in. It's kind of a lengthy survey. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to take you a long time to do it, but there's a lot of goals and objectives you just got to wade through. And with that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Michael. Anybody have any questions for Michael before we move on? And you're going to email out the QR code. Okay. All right, hearing no additional questions or comments, we'll move on to the next informational item. Vanderbilt University Move VU Technology Collaboration. And I'm going to deviate from the agenda just a little bit. I'll turn it over to Michael to introduce this item. Michael.
Thank you, Josh. I think for my part here, I just wanted to describe the relationship that exists between GNRC and Vanderbilt University on the particular project that you'll hear about. As you all know, we have in the transportation plan set asides for an active transportation program and a transit technology program. These are set asides of our SDVG site allocation to the region that we decide to direct towards specific policy initiatives. Vanderbilt had applied for to our call for projects for our transit and technology program a couple of years ago to begin piloting some technology to help us observe behaviors along corridors to help us assess environmental quality and roadway safety and traffic operations and management. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark for an update on where we are with the project. But I hope you find this very interesting. I do. And I think there's probably an ask from Vanderbilt today as well.
I might be best if I stand up next to the big thing.
It's up to you. You're welcome to have my seat.
Well,
I'm willing to give you mine if you want.
I don't need a seat. Okay, I'll just stand here. Can everyone hear me okay? So as Michael was saying, this is a project that we've been working on for the past couple of years, and it's really to explore how technology out there can be developed in a way that can help with transportation planning across a pretty broad spectrum. And so we put together a team that I'd like to introduce real quickly before I get into the content of the presentation. We have Ashita Dash, who is right here, who's on one of our research faculty members. We have Paul Johnson, who's actually a research scientist who's in Atlanta right now, and I think has joined us remotely. Drew Miller is an undergraduate senior that's part of our team. And then last but not least, we have Daniel Caparella, who most of you probably know. You may be a little bit upset that he's at Vanderbilt and not at GNRC. We kind of think of the fact that he didn't go from the dark side to the bright side. He went from the bright side to the bright side. But he's been very helpful since he's come over to us. And then Michael Briggs from Vanderbilt is also here, who's been kind of an advisor on this work. So as I go through this presentation, it's very informal. I would enjoy having any questions you might have while we go through it. And then, of course, there'll be some time at the end. We have a small number of questions we'd like to pose to you all to give us guidance on where we go from here. So as Michael was saying, we're really looking at what kinds of technologies are out there that are useful and how can we meld them together so they can kind of be a force multiplier in terms of what can be done to inform the decision-making process. That involves both motorized and non-motorized travel behavior. And there's a variety of different components to this. The most significant one is our cameras, which have, we've developed what's called computer vision. Many of you may be familiar with that. I'll show you an illustration of it in a little while. But with computer vision, the cameras can look at objects that are moving around, and we've developed technology that can take that object and associate it with saying, oh, this is a car, or this is a truck, or this is a bus, or a pedestrian, a bicyclist, motorcycle, scooter, so that you have the ability, when you're looking at a specific transportation site, to see exactly how things are flowing in there and can partition it into different types of objects depending upon what you're interested in studying. We also have the ability to create what we call spatial regions. So it could be a crosswalk, it could be an intersection where you're looking at turning movements. It could be a place where we're interested in lanes and how they're being used at curbsides in particular. So we have the ability to isolate those areas and then also look at what transportation activities going on within that isolated area. And then the third thing that we can do is we can look at what we call interactions with surroundings. So we can look at vehicles and how fast they're going, types of near misses that might occur between vehicles or between a pedestrian and a vehicle, any of those types of things. So the computer vision aspect of this that we've developed, I think, is very powerful. And the real question becomes, that's great, but how does that relate to the things that transportation planners are interested in learning about? But of course, the important thing is it's going on 24/7, 365. You don't have to put people out there at any particular time to get that information. Tied to this has been air quality monitoring. So at the same location that we have these cameras and we're doing this, we're also measuring air quality, which is a fairly unique thing in the technology world right now, is the idea that rather than relying on 2 or 3 air quality monitors that EPA may have put around the region, we're actually measuring air quality concurrent with traffic at that particular location. So you can see what kinds of activities are going on depending upon the daily traffic that's there or the type of weather that's there. These air quality monitors not only are measuring emissions, but they're also taking into consideration precipitation, temperature, humidity, wind speed. And then just the sort of the rest of the family, we have radar, which is another component that helps us with travel speeds. We have something called enhanced analytics, because you can imagine if you're positioning these devices in one location and you're looking at this information all day long for several days, that's a lot of data. So we've developed some techniques where we can rapidly package all that information together and allow you to do these types of time-staged analysis, such as what happens, at this location during rush hour from Monday through Friday. How is that different from Saturday and Sunday? We're looking at, well, when there's bad weather, how is that affecting things when we're looking at multiple days across a quarterly period where we've had heavy rain or something like that. And then the last part is the integration with smartwatch technology. We have another project that you may or may not know about that involves the use of Fitbits or Garmin's or whatever your smartwatch is. And we've developed in concert with one of the consulting firms here in town, the ability to see how stressed out you are by virtue of some of the metrics that are actually on your smartwatch. And so when you outfit pedestrians or drivers or other people with that, and you coordinate it at the same time with this information, you can start to see, oh, pedestrians are really stressed out at this location, and the computer vision shows us why they are. So there's a lot of very sort of mix and matching that can go on in this domain. So this is, we had to come up with an acronym, and this was done while I was sober. I'm kind of looking forward to when I'm not, see if I can do better. But we're calling this SCOPE, Solar Powered Computer Vision Object Processing Machine, or engine. And I have this pointer. I don't think it's going to work very well anywhere. But if you look at the left-hand side, this is the unit that we've put together. You'll notice that it has tires, so it's portable. You'll notice that it has solar panels, so we can power it without having to be connected to direct current. And then you'll notice that there's a telescopic pole. So we can mount these things at various heights. At the very top is where we have these cameras. They're called bullet cameras, but trust me, they don't shoot bullets. At least we don't think they do. But anyhow, they're pointed in different directions, and we can mount 3 or 4 bullet cameras in the same location. So we have quite a large field of vision. And then we have the radar that's up there as well. But then also on this pole, slightly lower down, is the air quality sensors. And so we're able to look at PM 2.5 and NOx because these are important emission standards that people are interested in tracking. But you'll notice that it also picks up wind and air pressure, temperature, and humidity. So we have this whole thing laid out there. Does anyone want to guess how much it costs a year to have something like this? Oh, come on, this is like Forrest Bueller. Anyone? Let's throw a number out there.
2 million.
2 million. About $20,000. You can rent this whole conglomeration and have the software and the data that you can pull from it for $20,000 a year. So think about that when you're doing some of these studies that go into your planning process. And think about the fact that you can move it around. You don't have to install, a several $1 million instrument in one particular location and it's fixed to that one location. So we've tested this in some places around Vanderbilt, some within the campus, but others on the periphery. We have 21st Avenue and West End and some areas like that. So we're getting into an environment that's sort of more in keeping with traffic in the region. And we've been very happy with the way this is coming around. So if I had to sort of put this together in a diagram, you have computer vision and you have the air quality sensors and you have the radar and you have the ability to do all these enhanced analytics very quickly. They all come into one repository. And so you have the time and location of this information all being pulled together and all available to you to mix and match. And then on top of that, we have this smartwatch technology that I've put it in a bubble because it kind of sits independently, but you can merge the information together. So everything in blue is what I would say is probably modeling travel behavior. And on the right-hand side, the smartwatch technology is really managing traveler stress. And you kind of benefit from knowing how they're feeling while they're doing what they're doing that we're observing. So here's just some examples of how this comes together. The first one up here on the top, tracking objects by class. I think, there we go. So you can see that each object is identified and given a unique identification, but it's also associated with a unique class. So we pick up a truck or a van that's different from a car, different from a bike. We don't have a bike in this particular video. You do notice that there's a scooter over there. One of the really interesting reasons why I highlighted the scooter is that there are things called image libraries in the country where people are packing together images of, okay, these are all semi-tractor trailers. These are all motorcycles. Some of those image libraries are pretty good. Some are needing improvement, and we're working on improving them. There is not an image library in the country that tracks scooters. We do. So that is a very unique development that's come from this particular project. I'm going to go over now to this other one. And this is sort of, what we've done is we've geocoded the crosswalk, but we're particularly interested in pedestrians at this location. You'll see this individual is not feeling very comfortable about where they are and how to get across. And he eventually does this. I mean, we could say he was slightly non-compliant because he didn't completely use the sidewalk. But in this particular case, if this were and is a very high volume area, you can see if he were wearing one of those smartwatches, in all likelihood, he would have demonstrated that he was feeling a considerable amount of stress. Down in this lower left-hand corner, because of the time, we didn't know whether we'd have a lot of time for the presentation. We didn't show videos with these others, but you can demarcate two different areas, and then when a vehicle passes between them, you can measure their vehicle speed. So you can also do speed analysis at a particular location, and again, be able to determine to what extent we have people speeding too much at a particular location at a particular time of day or volume of activity or whatever. Curbside utilization, this slide's a little fuzzy, but what we've done is we've demarcated the curb, and we have a methodology that allows you to be able to look at who comes in there by object class, how long they stay, and what they're actually doing. And we think this could be a really important issue when you get down to questions like downtown circulation, where you have UPS trucks and FedEx people and taxis and wheelchairs and bicyclists go and on and on and on, and being able to sort of see how much of this congestion is taking place and how's it affecting traffic in general. And maybe we should be putting some policies in place that ought to take advantage of what we're learning from this process in terms of who can be at that location at a given time and how long they're allowed to be there. And then the one on the far lower right there is near misses. Because we're tracking every object, we also know how close they are to one another and how fast they're going. Near misses have always been a real challenge in the transportation planning community because they don't show up in accident reports. But in a lot of cases, they're a precursor to the likelihood that that's a pretty dangerous place. So that kind of gives you a little bit of advance notice that maybe we ought to be spending more time trying to understand what's going on there. This is how the traveler stress management works. It turns out that the key factors in determining negative stress, and we have a partner from the medical school who's been working with us, is your heart rate and your change in heart rate. And there are calculations you can do that tease out when that means you're anxious because you're nervous about where you are, as opposed to being anxious because you just won the lottery. And so what we did here is we had several people wearing these watches for a period of time in and around the Vanderbilt campus. And what you see here is the output that comes collectively from that population. The magnitude is how many observations that we actually received. So you can imagine that Central Campus there is going to have more observations than anywhere else, or that area, because more people who are outfitted with this are passing through that area. But the color is what's important. Red means that it's a high stress location for the population as a whole. And so we have a lot of red in a couple of places down where we have West End Avenue and 21st. We have some red in a couple of other places too. And this allows transportation planners to then say, okay, next step is to look at these hotspots and try to understand better why people are nervous there. Or at least in this particular case, why is it that pedestrians are nervous there? But we can do the same thing with bicyclists and even drivers. They may be nervous themselves in certain locations because the fact that there's a lot of pedestrians and bicyclists in that vicinity. So this is just a first cut. Daniel and I worked on this primarily of some of the things that we thought we could help you with based on what this technology and this suite of tools and the programming that we've done that will enable you to do. So the first one is counts, and you can count by different modes. Many of you may use Streetlight or Replica, or you're familiar with that. It turns out that the models that they use are reasonably decent at the regional level, but when you get down to an individual intersection or a piece of a corridor, that's a real black box. And so one of the studies that we're interested in performing is to put this unit out at some location for a period of time and do those counts and then compare it to what Replica is saying, see just how accurate that information is that they're furnishing to people. But in other cases, it's sort of complementary because we're not putting cameras at every location in the region. So you still need to want to get that type of estimation in your planning models. Obviously, vehicle speed tests, near misses. I've talked about many of these already. But on the right hand side, you'll see just some of the different ways that we see information coming from those different applications that could inform any number of different types of studies that you may find to be important in your jurisdiction. So where are we now? We're kind of winding down what we're doing at the moment. We're pretty excited because we feel like we've done proof of concept, we've done some pilot tests, and now it's like time to enter the real world. And so we're getting ready for that. There are some platforms that we use with detection and tracking that keep becoming more technologically capable. And so we're moving a lot of our work to that more advanced version. We're almost done with that. We want to continue to expand what we're doing in terms of, particularly when it comes to non-motorized, because there's a lot more emphasis being put on bicycle and pedestrian safety and other non-motorized types of modes. And then we want to develop better reporting so that we don't just throw a bunch of data at you, but we organize it in a manner that's consistent with the way that you all want to digest that information. What we're interested in doing next is essentially moving into what we call an implementation phase. I think we're ready for our coming out party. And this is where you all come in, because we know we can move these units around. We know that they're very affordable. And so we want to actually work with you all within the MPO region to see if there are locations that you have that you would love to be able to have a capability like this to understand what's going on there and how you might be able to improve it. So any of these different applications you see listed here, we're interested in working with you to try to figure out how that can be developed in a way that will be helpful to you. In the meantime, we'll continue to make these models better. One of the questions that comes up is accuracy. How accurate is this stuff? I mean, does the computer really 100% of the time know that this is really a van when it says it's a van? We're getting up into the 90+% range now. So but we feel there's still always room for improvement. And we're continuing to just explore how what's out there can be put together in a way that's really useful to you all. I'm going to go back for a minute to this slide, because one of the things I didn't mention that I think is important is that when you have this type of technology, not only can you use it ahead of a problem to try to figure out how to mitigate that problem, but then once you put that solution in place, you can also ask the question, well, did it work? Or how effective was it? And so many studies that we see nowadays develop a solution to a problem, and then they move on to somewhere else, and you don't ever know whether it's working. Maybe it's not, or maybe it's creating another problem somewhere else in the system, which is not that uncommon. I mean, we see cases all the time where someone will change the traffic signalization in one location to improve flow, only to find out that the bottleneck just moved somewhere else. So that's pretty much what I have. This is now an opportunity to hear back from you. Sort of the broad question is this a good thing what we're doing here? Does it make sense? Is it going to be helpful? Second question is, in addition to the types of applications that we've been kind of fantasizing about, are there others that are possible problems you have that we might be able to address? And then the third question is, we're collecting data from the technology suite that we have here, but I'm sure you're collecting other data from other sources. And we'd like to learn more about what those data sources are so we can figure out how to blend them together. And that's all I've got. Yes.
Question, you're talking about going into our counties. Is this coming into our counties or cities? Is that part of your research, or is that where the $20,000 a year comes in that we pay you to come to our county?
So what we're hoping for is that we can go back to the Transit and Technology Program for an amendment to have the resources to be able to do these kinds of things without asking any of you to have to put up the $20,000.
Second question is, what's the data you collect from coming into our counties? Is that something is that a proprietary to Vanderbilt, or is that something you can share with the city?
We can share with the city. I mean, we've done this with public funds, and until such time as there's a reason or a need or an interest to develop this into some type of licensable product, at least right for now, for an implementation phase, there would be nothing of that kind going on. We kind of see this as, we want to work with you all. Hopefully we'll have the resources through this amendment to do that, share the information with you. And our interest is, okay, you know, in the laboratory, things look pretty good. And around the area that we're pretty familiar with, things look pretty good. But the truth is really in going out to the types of people like yourselves that have to deal with this and figure out what they want to do.
Our city is a very rapidly growing city, and so we constantly have traffic issues and infrastructure and things like that. So I think it would be great for our city to use it.
Thank you.
You mentioned Replica. Have you used the Placer AI app? Did that factor along with Replica? Placer's more of economic development, but it does the same thing as that sort of crowdsourcing.
Replica focuses primarily on counts, which is one of several things that we're talking about here. And they're trying to provide information on what they think is the average daily traffic in different segments of the metropolitan transportation network. But their technology is not, it's sort of machine learning AI based, but it's really more scaled for the broad region rather than downscaled to a particular location. So the more that you drill down to a specific part of a roadway or a specific intersection, their approach is not really designed to give you that level of accuracy. I'm going to turn it over to Daniel because he can probably answer that question better than I have.
I mean, I think just using whatever software and data that you have, I think is supplementary to the information that computer vision can provide. Because if you've got, you know, your own local information, whether it's counts or economic data, you can partner that with the Placer AI and also the demographic data that you're getting from Replica. And we haven't explored any of the demographic related stuff. Ours is more interested in, I would say, the traffic patterns and counts, whether it's motorized or non-motorized. But I think I would imagine there would be an opportunity to combine with any additional data sets that you've got locally.
How are you prepared to mitigate like public perception with the watch? Just thinking about in our metro areas.
So first of all, when you do research at a university, we have to go through an IRB process. It's called the Institutional Review Board. So we have to be able to demonstrate that whatever we're getting from an individual, we can anonymize it. So people that have participated in the studies up to now, you know, they sign and say, we're going to participate, but it's the language that's very clear that whatever's coming from them, we don't know them as, you know, as whoever you are. We just know you as an individual. We just know them as an individual who has a unique number, but we can't tie that number back to who you actually are. And that's how that's done. Yes.
I suppose this would have to be done through some sort of connection to the vehicle rather than visually, but does the scope outfit have the ability to determine whether or not the car is an electric vehicle or not?
We haven't gotten to that point yet, but I will say that lots of questions have kind of come up with how we can do even more precise work. So for example, Daniel is part of an internal project to try to see how the Vandy vans are moving around. Well, right now the computer says that this is a van.
Right.
But if we know that you're interested in a particular thing like that, we can start developing an image library, in this particular case, of what the insignia on the Vandy vans look like. So then when you customize it for that, when something pulls up, it says Vandy van rather than just plain van. So in your case, I would think that's an excellent question. I would think it maybe would have to do with whether there's a gas, a place to pump gas in the image. I'm just speculating.
Yeah.
But that's a really interesting question. That's why this continued research and development is down there. Once you get to a certain point, it opens up a whole nother sort of set of possibilities. Yeah.
Just assuming this gets off the ground and, you know, it's available to start deploying in different parts of the region.
I mean, how many units do you guys have? Is it just the one right now, or do you?
We have 3 or 4 at this point. We have 3. We work with a company called Herring Technologies, and they've been, I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they have a lot of the cameras that you see around stadiums and stuff like that for special events. And they've been very cooperative in working with us to provide us with whatever we ask for.
So on kind of taking that just a touch further, if you start getting a lot of requests, obviously you may have more requests than you have units to deploy. How do you determine?
So I think the way that
priority?
we're looking at this is it really depends on the length of time that you need to be observing whatever it is you're trying to observe. So we don't anticipate that there will be one unit sitting in one location for an entire year. We anticipate that you might need to look at something for a month or quarter.
So there'll be like a schedule.
And that's the beauty of the portable units. We'll just move them around to wherever the approach. And I would love it if there was a waiting list. But we haven't gotten to that point, and I'm sure that if this works out really well, then Herring Technologies and also we have an air quality provider called Clarity. They would be absolutely thrilled to add to the resource pool. Thank you. Yeah.
One of the applications that I'll put in folks' mind, I'm particularly excited about with this type of technology is the potential for before and after evaluation. When you do an intervention, I'm thinking like a spot safety improvement or something like that. We usually have to wait for several years of crash data because to build up, did that work or not? But with this, you could see, oh, are people actually moving like you want them to move because of this? And that could be a quick build demonstration project or just a small scale pedestrian improvement project, something like that.
Sure. I think the way we kind of like to do this is almost reverse engineer the thing. You have a particular problem and you ask the question, what in your toolbox do you have that might be able to help us solve this problem? And in one case, it might just be all you need is computer vision. In another case, it might be you need air quality. In another case, you might need, radar or whatever. Beauty is it's all packaged in one place.
Mr. Chair, we have a question online.
Billy Higgins with MTA asked, is some of the research similar to what Dr. Abhishek Dubey and Dr. Ayan, I'm sorry for the names if I mispronounce, Ayan Mukhopadhyay are doing with WeGo on computer visioning?
It's an independent project that you're talking about. And I believe that it's primarily looking at passenger counts and also looking at being able to be predictive with bus activities and trying to improve the efficiency of bus travel. So it's focused exclusively on buses as far as I know, and it's focused explicitly on sort of route planning and route operations.
So that's understanding as well. That's correct.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, along those lines, maybe Diana, you or Marty could talk a little bit about the SMART grant project and how it compares to contrast.
Actually, we have Vanderbilt is actually one of our partners in that as well as TSU, but we actually received a SMART grant from USDOT, and we first did it over on Clarksville Pike, where we actually monitored and put up and using LiDAR to detect how things are moving. So it detects, it doesn't show a picture, it shows actually lines. It's almost like when you used to play that word game and you draw the stick of a person, it actually kind of shows that. So different colors for different types of modes, but it catches the same thing. So it gives us, I forget what that game's called, Stickman? Thank you. Stickman. That's the game I'm talking about. It kind of uses, it has that in it, but it does tell you, and we used it for near misses, just to share with y'all. He gave us a really good idea of the patterns that we're having, that how cars moved, how the buses were moving, how bikes moved, how people moved. And it actually gave us a lot of great data that we worked very closely with WeGo, with our partners over at WeGo, to put up a brand new hawk to give pedestrians a safer path, because that's what they were using. They weren't going up and using the crosswalk. They were crossing right at the transit center, right at the front door. So we just put a hawk up so that they had the priority when they were crossing the street. We received the second phase 2 of the US SMART grant. And that's actually going to be used along Nolensville. That's where one of our high injury networks is Division 0. And we will be actually monitoring up and down Nolensville to catch those near misses to help us figure out better designs, capture where the pedestrians are crossing, figure out what behavior. Love the smart watch. Would really love to understand the stress in the passing, because in Vision Zero, we have found that the biggest thing is trying to change behavior. And I think understanding that stress would be like a great tool from that perspective. That's the one thing we're not capturing is that stress level of the individual who's trying to do whatever they're doing. But it is going to give us a lot of information, but it doesn't give any like pictures because it's LiDAR. So that's a big difference.
I'd say the other thing too, first of all, my colleague Dan Work is
Yeah.
working with them and he's been focusing on that, some of those types of technologies. I would consider what Diana has put up in these couple locations, it's kind of like the Rolls Royce in that it has to be, I believe, installed to power.
Yes.
And the cost of those units is, pick a number, was it 50,000, 100,000?
Oh, please don't make me do that.
Yeah. I'm not disparaging what you all do.
No,
I'm saying that that's another
Yeah.
tool in a broader toolbox.
Yeah. And we have gotten it in where we are able to move it around. So for example, we have moved it around to actually, I'll give you a great example. We have some council members who have coming to us and saying, hey, we need this done. And so we actually put the LiDAR system out there for a week to capture what's actually happening out there. Gives us 24 hours, 7 days a week's information. And we're able to look at that data and determine really what is happening. But again, I think with anything that you're using, it's important to put it out in the appropriate time frame, because putting it out the week of spring break doesn't actually give you truly the picture of what's happening. So I think it's important that whenever you're thinking about using whatever tool or resource, you want to make sure you're putting it out to capture the true data and the true activity that's happening. Because as we all know, on spring break, we don't have as many folks out on the roadway as we do during a typical day. And so you get some false data. So good data in, good data out, bad data in, bad data out. So I just want to
We're
put
also
it out
been
for my
working
colleagues.
with Diana. I believe you all have purchased some of the air quality sensors.
We are in the phase 2. We are going to be attaching the air quality with that, but we did not do that as the phase
Okay.
1.
Now,
Yes,
that
sir.
was, we've had some back and forth.
That was actually a recommendation that came through by the technical advisory board, group that's working on the phase 2 grant.
So to summarize, what Diana's group is doing is really good. It's very focused, and we're sort of providing a different type of product so that the fuller spectrum of what you can do is available to you at whatever price you can afford.
We do capture scooters if they're moving, but we don't capture scooters if they're sitting. And I don't know, for those folks that have scooters in our city and county are a headache. And they actually create a very a large safety issue for us. So I felt like that was like, I got excited with
Yeah,
that
and
picture, like
actually-
that scooter's in the wrong place.
Of the electric car, we have actually now, Drew and Ashita in particular, have now created a separate class of scooter without a person on it versus scooter with a person.
Yeah, so we do get the movement, but if it's sitting, we do not, but that can be just as dangerous depending on where it's at. So I saw that and I thought, no, that's a tool I like.
Question back here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this. What I'd like us to think about is scheduling the same time every year, come back for a month or a week, because we're really missing, Chattanooga has permanent counts. There's a couple eco counters in the state, but we're really missing like consistent longitudinal studies of come back to this Spike Pit Bridge across the river we have in Franklin or Nashville, come back every week or every month. That way you can actually compare rise and falls of trips, and then you can validate pedestrian level of traffic stress or just counts in general. We're really lacking that in Tennessee.
That's an excellent idea. And then you can also tease out whether it was raining that day or something, which, obviously is It's not an outlier, but it's understanding that that may explain some of the differences that you might be seeing.
Yeah, until you build a permanent counter, you have to rely on manual counts annually at that spot with a volunteer, or even better, something like this that you just put there for a week.
I would say the best way to think about it is you're already doing planning studies for the projects that you're doing. Or on the system level, whether it's like a intersection corridor, maybe in the system-wide analysis. I would say that this is a tool to supplement what you already have. But don't necessarily think of it as like, okay, we're gonna do a computer vision study. You're probably already doing a study on a corridor to improve safety, to do turning movement studies, to add a signal. Many of them are probably these RTP projects that you've been talking about today. So I would say that any and all of those projects are probably good candidates for you to add additional data into from the computer vision model that might help you answer some of the questions that you weren't already able to answer through those studies.
Just wondering if I can get the data that y'all have already collected, especially over on the West End and Broadway. I'd love to really have that to pull as we move forward with some of our design concepts for Chime. That would be really great information.
Well, certainly in the locations where, so we're on Hillsborough and Blakemore.
So excellent.
21st and Blakemore is where we have one now, and where's it?
21st and Broadway.
21st and Broadway, and where
And
were we
the-
before?
Before that, we were at Vanderbilt Place, and then before that, we were at West End and 24th.
That'd be really good data for us.
The other one that's just kind of coming to fruition is the medical, the hospital is very interested in what happens in that semicircle area there where, yeah,
Be interested in that too.
yeah, I think we all would.
Yes, sir.
Well, Mr. Chair, as we wrap up this item, if there are any questions from the committee or interest in partnerships, Daniel McDonald will be the contact for that. And depending on your interest and the interest of the policy board, we could look to continue to fund this beyond the existing grant program too. So that, just keep that in the back of your mind as we move forward. Then lastly, just a reminder while we're talking about data, big data sets, you should have received in an email from us a couple of weeks ago, request to take a look at a map of intersections across the region that are signalized. We are looking to acquire some supplemental data out of NRIX that could be used for intersection analysis. We want to make sure we have complete coverage in your community. So just make sure if you've got a signalized intersection that's not on that map that you let Max Baker know before we get to the purchase. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Daniel. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Very interesting. Moving on to the regular reports. First report we have is the TDOT report. Stacy.
Yes, sir. Just a few things. 2 planning grant projects just finished up for Nashville and Lebanon. So I'll try to follow up with you all to maybe give a little presentation on those at some point, what works within the TCC schedule as well. The 10-year plan will be out later this week. There's going to be several projects dropped from that were in there before in order to fund the Jim Kerr Parkway in Murfreesboro. That joke would have been better yesterday. Could have had like a presentation and all, but all kidding aside, the 10-year plan should be out in the next couple of days. So look out for that. We'll send out information for you all to distribute as well to all the membership. So essentially, you'll see the new projects that are being added to the 10-year plan from last year. So continuing on our current process with that. So looking forward to seeing that myself. So but a couple of days, we'll see that.
I already started typing an email to our legislative delegation to complain about it. So.
I was making sure Jim's paying attention.
Yeah.
He perked up on that.
Thank you, Stacy. Does anybody got any questions for Stacy about anything with TDOT? Okay, hearing none. Next item is the chair's report. I don't have anything today to report on, so that'll be nice and brief, and I'll move on then to the staff report. Daniel.
All right, and I'll hand it straight over to Taylor to give the status report.
So this is not a huge change. Actually, this is no change from the status report we had for the TPV meeting. They usually get those numbers, the obligation numbers from local programs, either the first or second week of the month. So I expect to have, might have, depending on when we get those next month, I might have 2 months of updates, essentially beginning of May. But so this is the last one we had. So it's March 4th, beginning of this month, last month, excuse me. So we're just about 1% behind, 59% of funds spent, but we're 60% through the effective time period as of March. So we would love to be ahead of the curve, I think, but I think that's that spot we're at now was a lot better than it has been the previous years in the tip cycle. So we're hoping, like I said, if we can get ahead of it, that'd be best. We have, as you know, some money that we'd like to spend. But right now we're kind of staying on track with the tip elapsed period and the amount of money we spend.
All right, announcements and reminders, a couple of action items for you all. But general announcements, Safe Streets for All NOFA was released. So I know there are communities that have been working on their planning version of that or would like to apply for planning or infrastructure. That is out. I forgot to look up the deadline for that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
End of June, then
Was that?
end of June.
End of June. Okay. So reach out if we can be of any assistance with that. Our UPWP drafting is underway. Thank you all for submitting planning studies for that. We will be getting a draft to TDOT this week, but we will continue working to improve it and refine it all the way through July, which is when we will be shooting for adoption at our TPV and TC. TAP grant obligation deadline. So we deal with this pretty much every year. We have lapsing funds. There's a 4-year lapse cycle. So 2021 funds on the federal fiscal year, we need to obligate about $3 million of that money. And so what we'll be doing is looking at projects that either have overages or that could swap funds from another funding source that have TAP eligible items. So like bicycle pedestrian activities, things like that on it. I just wanted to make you all aware of that. We may be calling you up and saying, hey, do you mind if we kind of apply this funding over here just to make sure those funds don't lapse. So another reminder on submitting any projects to the RTP that were not submitted by April 15th. Please stay after and select a date for your county workshop with Matthew and I after this meeting. And complete the policy framework that Michael was talking about during his presentation, ensuring that we have the priorities of the region that help us prioritize our projects in the RTP. Finish that by May 1st or earlier if you can to help us get that moving. Finally, there's the land development forecast, and I think Max can talk a little bit better about this, what this slide is.
Yeah, as most of you know, the last couple months I've presented on the regional forecast, and as we're wrapping that up, a part of it is getting the pipeline development. Really crucial information. I know it's tedious to do, but it's very valuable in getting especially those near-term forecasts much more accurate. We'll give a shout out to Brian Rose, Paul Porter, and Mike Madison for turning theirs in. Instead of congratulations, everybody should be sneering at them. What's actually happening is they are pulling the population and employment that could be going to your community, especially if you're a fast-growing community. Our model's not perfect. This is the opportunity to better get that information, especially in the near term. So our base year is 23 with the first forecast year of 25. So any information that you can have that helps us accurately predict 2025 is very helpful. And then anything that you think will be implemented before 2030 or know will be implemented before 2030, we encourage you to send that as well. It'll really help with our forecast and ultimately how your projects are scored, which is why it's even more important.
Yeah, one question in the chat. Billy Higgins with MTA asked, when will tip amendments and adjustments from last month be submitted to TDOT? To answer that, it should be at the end of next week, I imagine, have either to TDOT and then hopefully transmittal to FHWA and FTA for the transit administration amendments and modifications.
Yeah.
Well, we have the upcoming meetings on the screen here. I just wanted to, before we wrap up the staff report, Mr. Chair, just say thank you to Federal Highway for everything they do for us. $635 million obligated since we adopted our TIP. $630 million of federal funds invested in our communities to improve outcomes. I just wanted Melanie and everybody over there to know we appreciate them.
Upcoming meetings, I always like to wrap up with this. The regional council body is meeting April 16th at the downtown library. We'll talk about aging and disability, the revolving loan, and upcoming grant opportunities. Our next TCC meeting, same place, same time, May 7th. And again, as mentioned earlier, we'll move on to kind of talking about the policy framework that we've settled on, any improvements we've made to it. And then, of course, this is a TIP amendment month to push forward to our TPB, which will be May 21st. Also at GNRC, we will be doing two of the same items and adding a programming committee appointments to it. To see you at all those. And back to you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Daniel. Does anybody have any questions for staff? Anything that was in the report, Brian?
Is it still possible to respond on the UPWP survey, or is that closed? Because I just not get a chance to do it yet.
Yep. Still open. Yep. Still open. So, yeah, let us know if you have any problem getting into it. Yep.
I don't know if I responded to the intersection map. Did y'all email that out? Some of the, I guess I missed that.
Yeah, we'll include it in the recap again.
Okay. All right. Does anybody have anything else? Any announcements? Comments? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things briefly, if I may. Last year, you might remember me talking about EPA strengthening the fine particulate or PM 2.5 matter National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS. I'd mentioned that the next key milestone was that TDEC would submit to EPA our recommendations for which areas of Tennessee would meet the standard or attain the standard, and those areas that would not meet the standard by February 7th of this year. TDEC made that submittal to EPA recommending that all of Tennessee would attain that standard, contingent upon EPA approving exceptional event demonstrations that were submitted to EPA. And those exceptional event demonstrations were demonstrations of days where the monitors were highly influenced by Canadian or Western US wildfire smoke. So if EPA excludes those dates from the design value calculation, we should meet that standard. Of course, that's not what I really came to talk about. On top of all that, the new EPA administrator has indicated that the EPA will reconsider that standard. So I don't know where any of that really is, but I'll let you know if something significant comes about. So that's where we are on PM 2.5, but a little bit more pressing and concerning to me is ozone. At the end of last year's ozone season, we had a design value for one of our monitors here in Nashville right at the ozone standard of 70 parts per billion. Now the design value is a 3-year average. And so for this year, 2022 is dropping off and we're adding in 2025. Looking at the preliminary data so far, we would need a really low ozone value at one of our monitors and similarly close low values at some of the others here in Nashville. So what that means basically is that there's a pretty good chance that we would have some real ozone challenges this ozone season and potentially violate the ozone standard. So I'm asking all of you to take whatever opportunities you can to help us to reduce ozone precursors. So please make those efforts. And with that in mind, Mr. Chair, if I might just briefly mention 2 opportunities. The first is that TDEC's Office of Energy Programs anticipates releasing both level 2 electric vehicle charging infrastructure rebates, which include multi-family housing charging infrastructure in the 2nd quarter of this year. In fact, rumor has it it's probably just days away. So watch for that. We'd really like to help anybody install level 2 charging infrastructure. In addition, a diesel vehicle replacement funding program is coming this spring, which will fund all of the vehicle categories that we have earlier funded. We anticipate that we will provide about $19 million for projects that replace older diesel class 4 through 8 transit buses, shuttle buses, school buses, or class 4 through 8 trucks with new alternate fuel vehicles. So electric, propane, CNG. So if you have older diesel trucks, school buses, transit buses in your fleet that are, I believe, 2009 model year or older, this is an opportunity to get some help replacing those with alternate fuel types of vehicles. $19 million is a big chunk, but that's all we have left in the VW settlement. So this may be our last opportunity. So please help us get the word out. Help us reduce those ozone precursors so that we can continue to breathe healthy air this summer. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Mark about anything he discussed there?
Place we can find more information about that.
Absolutely. TDEC's Office of Energy Programs, they have a VW settlement page. You can go to that page. You can also subscribe to a listserv that sends out emails when this information, when we actually solicit for applications. If I remember, I will send a
If you could get that information to the staff here, they could,
Yes.
I'm sure they'll be glad to send it out. Yeah.
I'll send something for the after action report. Maybe that will have some links in it.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Okay, hearing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Second.
Please leave your name tags on the table.
Well,